Hi everyone, it's John. Welcome back to my channel. I have another book review for you today, which, kind of like last week, I think is a book that a lot of people on BookTube, the bookish corner of YouTube, have probably, if not read, have certainly seen or heard or read about discussed. Um, it is, it's like I'll tell you later, it is my first novel ever by this writer. It is Anthony Trollope's The Way We Live Now. I read this about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I think, with Peg from the History Shelf, and I think with um, Sharon. Did we read this together? I think it was a group of three. I don't think we read it with Hannah because we read the Thoreau biography with Hannah. I think Hannah was busy, too busy to read this with us. And I mean, at 850 pages, I obviously understood. Um, this is a big, fascinating late Victorian novel. Um, like I said, if you want to know anything about the novel, you probably already do and have sought out that information. But I write a review of every single book I start and finish and post it on this channel, and have done so for going on a decade. So, for the purposes of bookkeeping and record keeping, I will talk a little bit about it here. Trollope began The Way We Live Now after having just returned from an 18-month visit in Australia. And he returned to a country, England, his own country, that he thought was even more venal and petty than when he had left it. Quote, taught to feel that dishonesty, if it can become splendid, will cease to be abominable. uh, the resulting novel, published in 1875, is a really finely wrought, finely detailed dissection of a society ready to be torn asunder by corrupt financial grifters and their supplicant lackeys. Kind of sounds like the America of the early 21st century, but I digress. So, most of the action revolves around this very, very, very wealthy man by the name of Auguste Melmoth. He pops onto the London scene, the very definition of sort of this upstart parvenu, eager to display his financial and business acumen to any and all of London's upper crust. As a bit of a social collateral, he immediately throws a fabulous ball at which he plans to land his daughter Marie a suitable husband. And through this and other similar magnanimous displays of wealth, Melmoth quickly earns the trust and respect of those around him. In fact, they like him so much that they even call on him to host a visit from the Emperor of China and ask him to run for Parliament from Westminster. But before holding court for the Emperor, a little scuttlebutt starts to spread that Melmoth's finances might not be nearly as in good order as previously promised, and public opinion on him slowly starts to turn sour. Nevertheless, he wins his seat in Parliament and sort of continues to hang around in society. Being a tremendously rich heiress, Marie is prey to the machinations of several penniless noblemen, including the greedy, totally worthless ne'er-do-well Sir Felix Carberry, who makes a living off cadging money from his mother, who has her own head in the clouds about her literary ambitions and abilities. Despite all the sincere wooing that Felix does toward Marie, he gambles away all the money that she has procured from her father, and then reneges on their engagement. Marie ends up running off to the United States with Hamilton Fisk, who is one of the people who convinced her father to invest in this railroad company scheme that ends up being totally fictitious and is really more like a Ponzi scheme. It's just a way to make money. And that's how, in fact, Melmotte made a lot of his money. He gathered the money of people around him that had the opportunity to give him a lot of money, and they were promised a return, but he was never able to deliver. That's not exactly what a Ponzi scheme is. I think a Ponzi scheme is more like a a multi-level marketing scheme, but it was fraud. That's the important thing I'm trying to say. Now, ostracized as an outsider, Melmotte tries to rebuild his credit and his credibility, and it's probably no small chance that those words are etymologically connected for the purposes of Victorian society, by reclaiming his daughter's trust fund. And to do this, he forges another document. But he's been abandoned by all of his society friends, and he's even given a speech in front of Parliament in which he is highly intoxicated. And shortly after, I won't spoil anything for you, but things end up going not too terribly well for him. But to sort of zoom out a bit, to focus on Melmotte and the characters that directly deal with him, like I have been so far, is to really suggest that the novelistic world of the way we live now is a lot smaller than it actually is. This book is actually a small universe of characters that are simultaneously popping into and out of each other's lives, interweaving themselves in ways that seem more believable, at least to me, than anything Charles Dickens ever wrote. And on that note, despite having accrued nearly a dozen novels by Anthony Trollope over the last decade or so, this is the first one I've actually read, but I'll still opine on this question. I've often come across the question in bookish sites and BookTube and other places. Who's better, Dickens or Trollope? And after this one novel, which granted many people consider to be his best, but after having read maybe 5 Dickens novels, my answer would be Trollope. He can sometimes be the paint-by-numbers kind of writer that Dickens is, somewhat formulaic, but he doesn't have any of that heavy-handed, sententious moralizing, which always makes me sort of sigh or groan. Trollope seems less stuffily Victorian and more willing to treat his subjects like real people instead of marionettes to give a popular audience its bread and circuses, which we know Dickens frequently did in serial form. He would suit the actions of his characters to what audiences seemed to want, so he would anticipate his audience's reactions. It's one of the things you can do in serial form. But for anyone reading this who was force-fed books like Great Expectations or David Copperfield by an English teacher who didn't know his George Eliot from his Thackeray, try Anthony Trollope and compare them for yourself. I think you might agree with me that he is in some ways at least, a better writer. And just as a side note, for any Trollope completists out there who are intimidated by the size of two of his probably best known sets of books, there are two sets of books out there, each one called, one of them is called the Palliser series, the other one called the Barchester series. Each of them contains 6 novels. I have it on good authority that there is no need to read either one of them in order. So you can start at number 6 and work your way backwards if you like, or start in the middle, go forward and backward. It doesn't matter. Apparently, he does a wonderful job of bringing the reader up to date on characters and events that he needs to tell you about in order to make the story understandable at any point in the narrative. So I know some people just think they have to start at number 1 and go in order, but some of them are 1,000 pages long, and I can understand why those might be intimidating. So start at the shorter ones and see if you like those. That's probably what I'm going to do if I start one of those series. So, all that said, this is my first Trollope. I hope it's not my last, depending on what else I find. Very much a mood reader these days. But Anthony Trollope's The Way We Live Now. Let me know if you have any opinions, thoughts, or comments down at the bottom, and I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.